So good. Well, joining us, we've got Kyle and Kyle Slab and Baram and Jarala as well. And obviously we've got Stu McMinn and Reese joining us as well. So thanks so much for hooking into this conversation. Really, we're going to have a conversation, I guess, about fathering and about growing up using a cultural framework. And I know there's a few more people joining us now, so we might just give people just one more minute to connect in, and then I'll do a bit of an acknowledgement of country, and we'll head into having a bit of a convo. So how you going up there, Kyle and Jazz? You all good? Can you hear us, Jarala?
We can't hear you guys.
Can't hear you, Jazzy.
You might need to hang up and then rejoin, and that might be a good option. We've got people joining in from area. Bradley, where are you from, brother?
There you go, mate. I'm Brad Bennett, mate. I'm from over Kincumber way. I'm up at Carroll Mountains High School.
Lovely.
Yeah. Well, I've dealt a bit with you before, mate. I'm Brooke Simpson's partner.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I'm like, yeah. I know that face. Good.
Yeah.
Good, bro.
Yeah, no, I sent you down over did lessons and dance lessons over at Woy there.
Great for you to join us.
Yeah.
How are we going over there with the slab? So
yeah, we're trying to get hooked up. So they're just trying to figure out the sound right now.
Perfect.
See them, but they can't hear us, and we can't talk to them just yet. So.
And they're kind of an integral part to the whole.
They're pretty important in this conversation.
Yeah, so. We kind of want them there. How's the mob going, Bradley? All right?
Yeah, going good, mate. Going good. They're growing up fast, mate. So the little one's 8 months now, so it's going quick, mate. Then nieces and nephews are all growing up as well, so it's all happening.
Fantastic.
How you been, mate? All right?
Yeah, well, flat out as always, but in feeling quite blessed. I've got a lot of wonderful people around me, and I've got my son here with me in the session today. He's probably looking, going, "Don't embarrass me, Dad, please." But that's inevitable.
That's not pretty used to it. I got my boss here now.
Hello, boss. He's someone else's boss as well, actually.
I'm everywhere.
That's right, my boss.
I like that you have your bookshelf there, Phil.
Thank you very much, Monica.
You're welcome.
It does make him look smarter than he really is, doesn't it?
You just need some glasses, hey, Stu?
Yep, like this.
I'll let you boys get back to
me. Do some work.
For those of you who don't know, that was Phil's wife.
Excellent. So,
I promise.
Look, I just sort of talk a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today, which is, fathering and growing up in a cultural framework and using a cultural framework, the practices and principles that First Nations people have been using for thousands of years. How do we do that now in 2020? And I guess a lot of my connections culturally and family connections and work has been out in Central Australia, in the Tri-State region where the borders of Northern Territory and South Australia meet WA. So that's mainly been working with Anamul, so working with Pindara Yankundara mob. And obviously, we often think about those places having really strong cultural connections, ceremonies still strong. And sometimes we think that those things aren't happening in New South Wales anymore. I think there's a really common perception, actually, when I talk to people right across the country that culture and law in New South Wales, maybe it's not happening anymore. Maybe people aren't speaking language anymore. And so really today's about exploring, well, okay, we know that maybe some things are happening in, places like Central Australia and Arnhem Land, But what's happening in places like the Central Coast of New South Wales? What's happening up at Fingal Head in New South Wales? And how are those cultural principles that are still so strong? How can we use those in this kind of ever-changing world that we're in? So, Jazz, Kyle, can you hear us now?
Yeah. Yep. Can you hear us
Ah, and we can hear you. Jeez.
Hey, good.
You're looking good, eh?
Hey.
Hey, Brad.
I can't believe that Pidgeon's the only model in your family. So to kick us off, I might just do a quick acknowledgement. And so I want to say, quite an acknowledgement in London, Vanya Anamu Jurako, or Iridan Muno Quadi Jurako. I just want to honour all the countries that we're meeting on today, all the different groups of people and the traditional lands that we're meeting on. And I also want to speak that out in Pitjantjatjara today as a way of me acknowledging, my heritage is Greek, English, Irish, Scottish, non-Indigenous heritage, but been really fortunate to be culturally connected with Bob out in APY lands. And so I want to speak that in Pitjantjatjara today as a way to acknowledge and honour those old people and young people who've taught me our language and invited me into those cultural learning spaces as well. Today we're really, really fortunate, really, really privileged to have with us Kyle Slab joining us from very far north New South Wales. Kyle is a Bundjalung man and a respected elder and cultural educator, and he's joined us today with his two sons, with Badam and Jarrala. And also joining us today is Stu McMinn. So Stu is a Darug and Gubbi Gubbi man, and he's also the practice lead for Aboriginal services within Interrelate, and does a whole bunch of cultural consulting and training across New South Wales and the nation as well. And he's joined today by his son Reese. So it's a great conversation, a conversation that I've been probably having with you guys for some time, and sort of bringing it into that public space, I think is pretty cool. So what I thought we might sort of do first is just allow you guys to introduce yourselves a little bit more fully, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll let the young fellas introduce themselves as well. And then we'll sort of go into having a bit of a convo about this stuff around fathering and growing up in a cultural context. So, brother Kyle, do you want to kick us off a little bit, Bruz, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to up there?
Your way. Yeah. Jingawalawi, my name's Kyle, and you know I know a couple of you fellas there, but we're up here at Fingal or Bunningbar in our lingo, and this is traditional country of our great grandmother, and our old people been here for a long time, right back from way back, and so we're privileged to be on our country here, or the old people fought for, but I work for an organisation called Bunarm that we started a while ago, a fair few years ago now, but it's about teaching cultural systems and frameworks and finding new applications for that in modern day. And but that's sort of only the really latest progression of everything that we've been doing over the last 20, 30 years, is about how do we live as Aboriginal people connected to culture in society today.
Yeah, beautiful. And do you want to tell us, Kyle, who you got with us? Or Jazz and Badam, do you want to give a little intro to yourselves, who you are and what you do?
I'm Jarrala. I'm the oldest one, and this is Banam, and that's pretty much who we are. We live just down the road from Dad, but a lot. Yeah, we play a lot of music. And our music talks about what we're seeing as young Indigenous people, and what are the ways forward from here. So that's basically what we're doing now.
Unreal. And my two girls are absolutely in love with you guys. They love it when you come and take up space on our floor with your mattresses and whatnot. And they're always talking about next time when you just come down. So it's cool to have you guys with us. Stu, do you want to just give us a little bit of an intro to you as well?
Yeah, Nanonini Stewart, or Wirramayippa. So I'm Darug and Gubbi Gubbi man, and look, not all that dissimilar from Kyle. You know, it's I'm lucky to be living on country and raising my children on country, and sharing the cultural ethos that our old people have passed on to us for a long, long time, and humbled to be part of that, and humbled to be connected through these conversations with people like Kyle and Dom, who was on previously, and Joe, and just the amounts of wisdom we've had on here. Culturally, it's all about connection for me, and sharing and living and breathing and understanding spirit, and understanding what the ancestors are trying to teach us on a daily basis. I fail at that pretty regularly, but I'm trying to get that right as much as I can as well.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Stu. And Reece, do you want to tell us a little bit about you, mate?
Yeah, so I work at a primary school actually at the moment, and I'm the Aboriginal Education Officer, which is kind of like what Dad was saying about sharing. It's kind of my main role is sharing culture and stories and passing it on to our younger generation, so that they have it for when they grow up as well. And on top of that, I do a lot of learning with Dad and a lot of our cultural uncles, and just trying to learn about country, more about our stories, more about language. So just growing up, trying to constantly better myself for my future, as well as sharing it so it continues on.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks so much. Mate, what a panel. I reckon we could stop right there and people go away with a whole bunch of good knowledge. But Kyle, do you want to tell us a little bit about maybe what was life like growing up there at Fingal, and how's that how's that influenced and impacted how you've been a father, and how you've had family up there with Juz and Bunham and other family as well? You've got other sons and things that you're raising up there.
Yeah, growing up here, we grew up with our old people. So grew up with my grandparents and all that generation. That generation here, in their early childhood, they were in a traditional context here. So, a bit of, and up until fairly late, we're kind of fairly late to the party as far as settlement and colonisation in this area. And so it was, old people were still, they had a lot of cultural practice, and even through the time, the policies and the government kind of policies and things that happened through their lifetime, they still maintained a lot of that cultural systems and ways of living. And so I grew up with them. Our grandmother spoke a language which we still speak here in the community, and it was oppressed during government policy in different times, but it still survived through that, and a lot of other cultural practices. So we've been really fortunate in this place. We call ourselves black privilege sometimes. Like, we had a lot of places that did have things taken away. We were pretty fortunate to be out of the way a little bit, and some of those things still survive for all that. And so our grandparents started the process of talking about this is really our country. They never moved off this land, so they always kept and maintained that idea that this is our country, and always maintained that. So it was handed back officially in around about 1990, before native title under the Land Rights Act. So I think growing up on country and on Aboriginal land from my sons, that's had a massive impact, on our kind of ways of thinking and being and on country. But we grew up hunting and fishing and doing. We grew up doing that, but we've all gone back to that since COVID. So that's been a good thing, with the old people being all around. But yeah, we lived a lot off what we caught and what we could catch and what we were hunting for. So that part of our life has always been part of that. I think with my boys, I wanted them to have same experiences that we have as far as opportunities for cultural education and connection to country, and just the principles that old people carried and were really strong about. And there was a couple of questions that the old people asked me my brothers. So I've got a bunch of brothers and a couple of sisters, and they the old people asked us when we were young, what does it mean? Like we'll talk about who we were before, like back in the past and how things were culturally and what we did and how things had changed. But one old fella said it's important who we were, but another important question is who are we going to be in another 200 years? And so that really made us start to say, well, what makes us who we are and what do we want to take into the future? So that had a real big impact on us. Having elders around that were like supportive and also really had culture education as priority for us, that made a big difference on me growing up.
Yeah, and then wanting to give that same experience to your family, to your sons growing up as well, eh?
Yeah. Yep.
Stu, what's it been like for you, that experience? A similar story to Kyle's or something completely different?
No, similar in ways, but different in others. So we've always grown up off country. I travel to country as much as possible. I live on the Central Coast, whereas my country is Sydney. So for me, a lot of our country is gone. It's not gone, it's just covered in concrete. But living on the coast here, we've got wonderful sites and learning places that we've been able to learn and practice culture on. So for me, living off country has provided some difficulties at different times. How do you practice culture on a place that isn't your homelands, and how do you navigate some of the nuances that we get within community around that? But the ethos has always been the same of what Kyle was talking about, eating country and being part of country and learning from her, and also then bringing what our old people taught us and putting it into our learning where we live has been a huge ethos. Parenting is exactly the same. It's embedding that lifestyle for kids. So, for us, taking our kids out, being on country, showing them how to hunt, showing them how to fish, showing them foods and plants and medicines and Reese will probably talk about the repetition of how many times I'll ask them what a certain plant is and how much it drives them nuts. But it sticks in their head, they get angry at me, but they know the plant, because every time they're like, it's a headache tree or it's a, what have you. So, but just what I've noticed is around their context with that thing, at first it starts around that, but then they start to understand that plant has a tree and that they need to be respectful when they pick the berries from that plant, or they take the medicine and that they're pulling the hair from that spirit. And so essentially it's just a foundational way to teach our kids respect, not just for themselves, but for all things that are part of this Nura, part of the planet or their Nura, their camp that they live within. And that radiates out to everything else that they do. I've only met Kyle physically once, but the first thing that radiated was the respect that come from his kids, like that humility that was there and that was so present. And for me, it was just this wonderful feeling of affirmation as a father, to kind of go, okay, I feel like I'm doing the right thing when you see another father who's raising their kids pretty similarly. So I think that answers your question, Phil, and you'll need to cut me off. But
no, that's really good, and same things. I think everyone, Reese and Madam and Jarla and your other sons, your other kids, grow up with that respect. It's something that I see when I interact with them, something that I feel when I am around them as well. So Kyle, in terms of
in spite of us, not because of us sometimes.
Well, yeah, I think that might be. Kyle, can you talk to us a bit about raising kids in a really specific Bunjalung framework? What does that what has that meant for you? Like in terms of some of the stuff that, we've shared, and I hear you talk about in terms of, Bunam and Gogorn and things like that. What's that Bundjalung specific framework that you want to pass on to your kids? And maybe as well, like, what are the challenges in doing that now in 2020?
Yeah. Just that whole system for us, it's the second brother is your Bunam, and that's everyone who sort of comes down the line. Then the next fellow that's behind them is Bunam to them, and your Gogorn, you have responsibility for each other, like all cultural systems for us. So that's why his name Bunam, because it just stuck with some of them. It just sticks, the second brother, and so there's about 10 Bunams in our community. Yeah, their cultural kind of role becomes their name too, but for me it's important, and I'm pretty open to ideas, and the old fellas, I think some of our old people were the most innovative people that you could come across, that the wisdom that they had, but also the application of knowledge and the ways that they came up with doing things. It's mind-boggling how intelligent some of them old people were. And so I started to apply some of the cultural systems that I learned off them in modern ways, and like I said, I'm open to different ways of doing things, and I'm open to innovative ways of applying old wisdom, but I couldn't find anything better than the systems that the old people taught me. That's the reality of it. And so I really tried to tell the boys that everything that old people given us is enough for us. We can. That's if we didn't have anything of Western society, then we'll be right. And because what they've given us is enough for now and for the future. But don't let that limit you to traditional cultural practices. Use the same systems and knowledge in your applications in your modern life. So that was my kind of aim with my young fellas. I felt the weight of the cultural responsibility to pass things on, but I also didn't want to leave them fellas didn't want to hold them back either from anything that they wanted. But I found that cultural education has really been the beginning of everything. That's been the thing that's got me where I am in life, and got me through the hard times and got me and it's always been there in the good times. So I try to pass that on to the boys. The hard thing with those cultural systems in the modern world is that, the society that we live in focuses a lot heavily on individualism. And you can be what you want to be, and it's all about you. And don't get held back by anyone else. It's all your thing. Where the collective mindset and also the collective kind of conscious, relational, the kind of social structure, and how we're, like brother said, Stu said, we're all connected, and you do have value as an individual, but your belonging is in the collective. To really see that value that you have as an individual really activated, it happens within a collective. And that's what I tried to instill in the boys, where, a lot of time with society, they get pulled away from that, you do your thing, you do you be you, do you, and all that kind of mindset. Yeah, do that. But in our cultural context, there's two principles that make everything else work. All the other systems work, and it's respect. What we say, garama in our language, and ngimbalin is contribution. Respect and contribution. Always, they're the two principles that always got to be there and always got to be balanced. And sometimes you don't see that outside, and there's a bit of pressure for young fellas,
Yeah, for sure. Jazz has put something in the microwave, I think.
Jazz is burning. Jazz has got the kettle going there.
Good lad. I think to pick up on one of Kyle's points, Phil, is the collectiveness. You know, like our cultural elder or our leader, Uncle Paul Gordon. The first thing he taught me was that when I went through my learning, I know I didn't have rights. I got obligation. And that obligation was to everything and all things, and to live that obligation. And a lot of what I see around that individualism is young kids come up now and they go, well, you can't do that or what have you, I've got rights. And I go, yeah, but with those rights comes responsibility. And with responsibility becomes obligation. And it's one of the principles I constantly drum into my boys, is that you now have obligation. As a man, you may have what you got perceived rights, but there's none of that. There's obligation to the collective, to the community, and it's about contribution. You know, it's about collecting that firewood when you need to. It's about making that cup of tea when you need to. But in turn, my role in my obligation is also to make that cup of tea for them and to get them firewood, you know. So it's that collective system that actually helps the wheel turn, and it actually takes the ego or the individualism out of it, because you realize that everyone's needs are just as important as yours, and so you need to fulfill that obligation to one another.
Yeah. I think that's sort of what you're both saying is, you know, that individualism and that you know, we're striving for independence, but really what we need is interdependence, right? We need to be dependent on one another and contributing to one another. And I think so much of our society is completely against that. We want all the rights with no responsibility.
Yeah.
We want all the good stuff with no obligation to one another. We want to be independent is held up as the thing rather than interdependence, I guess.
And I watched it when because I separated and remarried, and we brought two families together, and my stepdaughter was really young and she had a Western framework growing up, and my daughter was very young, and it came time when they had to share toys, and Talia was like, shared, because that's her obligation. You know, is that story, Tiddalik the Frog, teaches us about not being greedy. So you share. Whereas my stepdaughter didn't necessarily have that framework, and she was like, no, what's mine's mine, and you can't have that. And I watched this play out, and I watched my daughter kind of be like, no, I'm not understanding you. Why don't you share? You know, and to be fair on my stepdaughter, she had no other framework. So she was like, I don't understand you. What do you mean we've got to share? And so what I needed to do was sit, and we taught my stepdaughter about Tiddalik the Frog. You know, it's a Nurapa story that taught us about sharing and looking after each other. And then over time, she was able to grasp that cultural concept of everything belongs to everyone, and that it's okay to share, and that it's, you know, but in turn, I need to be fair on my stepdaughter and her cultural lens, because that's the world they're growing up in, and that it's okay to have some things that are just for you. But it's important to remember that sharing where we can and as much as possible is really important. So it was wrestling with also not taking away from her cultural framework as well. But it was something, it's just an example I use all the time, because I see it. And then, you know, in your language, you've got napaji. In our lingo, we call it nukidi, and I'm sure Kyle has a similar words for to give and to give and to give, you know, is to always share and always give. And but now they've embraced that concept. There's less fights. They're about to become teenagers though, and makeup and clothes and things like that might be a point of conjecture when it comes to sharing, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. That's good, It's real good. What's it? Can we bring the sons into the convo?
Yeah, give them.
Jazz and Vanam and Reese. I mean, what's it like being like for you guys growing up within a cultural framework? Like, was there times when you realised that you were growing up in a way that was different to some of your mates that were around at school or in the community or whatever? Was there a time when you realised that, oh, we've got something really special here, or what was that like, sort of growing up and realizing that maybe the way I've grown up is a bit different to the way some of my mates have grown up?
Yeah, high school.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think like growing up, you see it's different, and it's interesting growing up in a world where you're different to the one, like you're the minority.
Yeah.
And where before high school we've come from like we're still living in a community, so it's a normal for us.
Yeah.
And then you didn't like I don't think I kind of seen the value of it until I started to learn the frameworks and things like that. And then started to get chances to apply them, like to consciously make the connection and choose to use them in the work and in the space that we're going into. I think there's a quote: you're raising your kids for a world that you've never experienced. So your parents raise you for a world that they've never experienced, but there's things for us like cultural frameworks and your values and your morals and beliefs. Them things are the things that you carry into that next world and help you navigate that. And I think the cultural framework for me, now that I'm out of school and doing kind of finding our own ways to express ourselves, and I think the frameworks have been the biggest thing that stuck and made it easier for us to navigate another world of technology and everything else like that, and heaps of information.
Was there a time, Jazz, when it was harder? Like when you know all your mates are living in a way that's that's different to the way that you kind of grown up living. Is there a part of that that's a challenge to negotiate some of that, or?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, you're always just pretty solid, like.
Yeah, like I don't know.
The obligation side of things.
Yeah, so sometimes it was, when other mates would be out doing stuff, but I'd have to come home and look after some people or do some kind of job or something like that. But it wasn't really. It's not really harder. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
When people rock up and you got to look after their kids and stuff.
Reese and Sydney come. Yes. Yes.
But and Reese, do you guys want to come in? What's been some of your experience?
Wow, what was the question again?
Well, you can make your own question. No, just talk about like what was it like growing up? A cultural framework, and then did you realise at some point that you'd grown up in a way that was a bit different to your mates?
Yeah, mainly when I hit high school, like, because we were fishing and hunting and all that when we were little, and seeing that not everyone like done that or knows how to do that was a bit funny for me, like still even.
Yeah.
And but I've learned over time, like I drag my mates into it now, like to teach them stuff, and so they learn stuff. But yeah, it wasn't real hard for me, like to go in between.
Yeah. But you had such a solid framework that allowed you to move between those two worlds, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
There's always little things like, look at people in the eye and stuff like that. But like, the computer's going. But it was small cultural differences, but it didn't feel like it was real hard all the time, any time. Like,
yeah,
we come home every day to the beach, and we're fishing and surfing, and like we live a pretty good. It was not too far away from where we live.
Yeah. Nice. Thanks, fellas. How about you, Reese? What's it been like?
Tell
Tell us everything, mate. Tell us all about how give us the dirt on Dad.
Dad's got a boomerang here.
I'm not dumb. I know where I sleep. No, I'm pretty similar actually. When I hit high school was probably when I realised mostly that I had a different upbringing, which has to do with we were constantly on country. Dad would take us on big walks on the weekend. You know, he goes out bush quite regularly, so he used to take us along to go and learn. You know, we used to do big trips out to our corroborees for our big dance ceremonies. You know, and we used to sit there and learn from everyone. Where I used to come back and I used to kind of talk to everyone about it, and no one would understand what I was talking about because they didn't really have that. But I recently noticed it about 2 years ago when I turned 18. All my mates, it's their rite of passage is going down to the pub for a drink, you know, and or not just a drink. They go pretty hard actually, you know. And for me, I've never felt like that. It's hard to explain, but for me, I sit there, I can have one or two, and I don't really feel like, you know, I go home, I'm in bed by 11:30 at the latest, you know, like everybody tells me I've got an old soul because I go home and go to bed early, but because of all the cultural lessons I've learnt from not only Dad, but cultural elders, and, you know, and also just seeing family and listening to them has made me understand that it's not really for me. You know, I've got all these beautiful cultural lessons that teach me how to be a better person and now a better man moving forward in the future, that I don't need that type of you know, those type of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know high school, I was very same. High school was just the place for it.
I think his dad's worse than he is, and probably one of the places he was talking about.
Look, I wouldn't say that. Not dumb either. Look, we're happy for other people to join in this conversation as well. So, you know, if people have got a question, feel free to chuck it in the chat section there, or just turn on your microphone, turn on your video, and join in. And these guys are, you know, a wealth of knowledge, and so feel free to join in the conversation and have a bit of a chat or ask a question. Kyle, how central is land to your framework in terms of how you raise your kids?
Yeah, like our brothers mentioned there, we say devil in our language. We've got a lot of names for a different kind of country, but when we say Javon, that's the land as our mother, you know, a living entity, and that's the heart of all of our whole cultural framework. And so, like the young fella said, you know, Reese said, going out onto country and being out with your dad and being connected to that, that's the beginning of everything else. Everything else comes from land. And so even we talked about relationships, a right relationship with land first is the beginning of right relationships with one another, and for us and with spirit. And that's so for me, I think that right relationship and connection, and especially the story that's held in the country and in the land, like that's what I hear from all these young fellas. You know, they have a story, and that story's been passed from us as their fathers, but from generations of this country. So they are aware of the story of the country, and that connects them to country. And, you know, no matter what happens in their lives and where they are, that relationship to country through their story is, I think that's the ground, and that's really the central point and the grounding of the rest.
Yeah, for sure. And then one of the things that I've heard you talk about before, we've had yarns about this, is, you know, ultimately are people relating to land as a commodity or an entity, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
One of the big questions, yeah?
Yeah, for I think that's one of the main differences between Aboriginal cultural systems and you know, other cultural systems, is that difference of that it begins at the relationship with the country, and you know, that's why one of the reasons why I value cultural systems and frameworks so much, and why I think it's essential for it to be perpetuated through generations, is that you know, it doesn't matter what happens, you always have to live with the land. And the further you get away from that relationship to country, the further you get away from being who we are, not only as Aboriginal people, but as humans, you know. And I think this little break that everybody's had over the last few months, a lot of people have reacted to that inherent deep story about, like, you know, how do we connect to country and how are we living in this time? Is it sustainable for mob? You know, I think that's not only a central reference point, but I think that's the essential critical question for people to answer going forward, you know, so into the future for people and you know, there's fellas trying to think how we're going to get off the planet and go to Mars. So when you know, like, maybe they never had a proper relationship with the country and with land in the first place, you know. So I think that's a critical one and a really it's one that the next generation has to have a foundation in and pick up, and that right relationship with the country first to take it into the future.
Yeah, when people ask me about COVID, I was like, hey, it's the best thing for mother there is. Like, we are the biggest locust on this planet, you know. And for me, it was like, at least she's getting a rest from everything we do to her. You know, she's getting to breathe again, because we're not taking so much from her because everyone's forced to stay inside. And I think you're right. The commodity kind of stuff is ridiculous, because we just think, how can we carve her up and sell her, rather than how can we give back to her. It's funny. I reflect all the time, as you know, I sit there with groups of people and I go, you name me one thing you've got on you that you use that doesn't come from mother. And they sit and they trying to work it out and they can't. I go, that's because it all comes from mother. You know? So, but that story, you're right. You put it so eloquently that our kids are growing up with that story and that connection, and therefore that relationship, and just grounds them massively.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Awesome questions come through. How important is it to have successful and healthy relationships with your partners, especially to support positive and healthy fathering? So, being able to share a little bit about, you know, the partners that you're partnering with in terms of raising your families. You know, what you're happy sharing, and how important is that relationship?
I think for me, like, being a male and having a female partner is like, I teach my kids about Gunny, or mother, and the importance of looking after her, and how can I turn around then and treat my partner with disrespect? It's the same thing. Mother is mother, and you need to treat the women in your life the same way. I think the importance of having a partner. So my wife is non-Aboriginal, but is fully involved in our cultural framework, for want of a better word. And having a partner that is completely supportive and understanding of that framework and how to live within it and share and to raise your kids in the same way is really important. And even though you come from two worlds, you're able to find a path forward. And that's always been hugely important to me, is a partner that supports that process. But also for me as a man, I need to teach my sons how to interact with the partner. And that comes first of all through my action, not through my words, and how I physically treat her and emotionally and spiritually. But also, more importantly, I need to teach my daughter how she is to be treated by a man. And so for me, that relationship, and a healthy relationship, is massive. And that's not without the understanding that you go through hard times. At times there's things in relationships you need to work through and unpack and have deeper conversations about. But as long as that's done respectfully and humbly, you know, then that's okay. It's good modeling for the kids and for them to understand that conflict's a part of life, and how you work through that and deal with that is really what's most important. So if kids see that and they understand that they've got to work through that, then that's a good lesson from me.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Braz. How about you, Kyle, bro?
Yeah, you know, the cultural systems for me, they're about balance, and so you need to have that balance that you know, your partner brings to that. And yeah, it's important to have I know for me, you know, my wife been with me for 20 something years, and you know, that's and I think it's been a good 20 something years, but she might have other ideas. You have to ask her about that. But yeah, I had an idea that what I saw culturally with my grandparents was I really only saw the roles in they really had specific men's business and women's business, and so for me it was kind of just the way things were, and going into a relationship was a whole nother thing altogether for me, and I was a bit shocked at the start because I thought I'd just do my half and you just do your half and that's it, everything will be right. But I didn't realise how much those halves cross over when you're in a relationship, and you know, understanding that some of those, and also coming from different mobs too, recognising those differences and saying, well, look, our kids are growing up with my way, but they should go out on her country too, and make sure that they understand both ways. So we've made an effort to make sure that they understand both our country and our people, and that's been part of it. But also, there's times when I wouldn't be living in a house, living in a bush camp or a tent, or even spending time with the swags for extended amount of times out bush. Having a partner that understood that, I come from a cultural background, and I wasn't always going to do things that were, I wasn't going to, sometimes I wouldn't be able to do the 9 to 5 and, get the mortgage and do all these things because I had cultural obligations. So it was, I think that part of it, and having that understanding from Sis, that's been a big help in being able to pass on cultural knowledge and education for the young fellas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unreal. Look, we've so good. Thank you so much. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'm just wondering if we kind of go around and give everyone a bit of a last word, and maybe it's sort of talking to other dads and other young men out there who want to live, according to cultural principles and a cultural framework. But maybe people are really new at that journey. Maybe they're just starting off, or maybe they're a little bit further down the line. But I mean, what wisdom or what things can you say to people about, trying to live out a cultural framework? And maybe if you can, it's a big ask in a couple of minutes, but what would you say to maybe Aboriginal people who are in this virtual room with us, and maybe also non-Aboriginal people who might want to connect and live by some of those principles as well?
Go on, yeah.
You want me to jump in? I'll jump in while the brothers. For me, parenting's never easy. I've struggled with it massively, and I said earlier that I think my son the way he is in spite of me, not because of me. But I think for me the biggest lesson I learned, and again was from a cultural elder of mine, but was that always to affirm that they're good boys or they're good girls. Always affirming that they're good kids, and that you need to love them and be humble and respectful with them, just like you are with anybody else. And so I've always tried to do that, and as I said, I've failed lots, but I've tried to ensure that they always had a supporting, loving father that was understanding, who tried to understand the world they were growing into, because it was foreign to me, but also that supported them through the process and understood that always they're good kids, and that they're going to be good kids as long as you affirm that constantly. And we all make mistakes. So for me, that's probably one thing I've tried to always focus on: humility, respect towards them, to teach and show them, but also love, compassion, and letting them know how dear they are.
Yeah, beautiful.
And then some boomerangs every now and again.
Reese does, but is there anything that you would want to say to other young fellas that might be in similar position to you in terms of, advice or how people can live out cultural framework?
I think just respect. just that respect for everyone, which has been talked a lot throughout this whole session. Yeah, it's respect. Have respect for everyone. Even it's funny when you talk to some people, you look at them and you might go, oh, they know nothing. You know, you kind of have that perception of them. But I think the way that Dad's brought me up and is just sit there and listen, have that respect for them, because they might know more than you think in your first initial your contact with them. So like we've been told stories. You know, Dad used to tell us Dreamtime stories, or he still tells Dreamtime stories to Leah, my little sister, and but one of those was talking about don't judge a book by its cover. So yeah, it's about, I think for me it would be respecting everyone and yeah, just probably sitting on country a bit and learning from people.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks, Reese. That's great, man. Yaz, Butter, anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, just I reckon just try and get in learn as much culture as you can, and like Dad said, Garama and Gimbalin, which is respect and contribution. Like respect everyone, especially your elders, and just see what you can contribute to your people and contribute what can.
You're
Just
Oh yeah, that's why I agree with that, but also saying go and spend much time on country as you can, practicing your cultural, you know, whether it's fishing or with your people, and have the relation and be kind of make time for the relationship, to build relationships with your country and with the people around you. And if you're not on that country, then the people from the country or the people that are around you, it's important to connect to them and yeah, practice your culture as much as you can.
Yeah, so good. And brother Kyle, any last words for us?
I was just thinking of something, but I forgot. No, yeah, everything what everyone said, you know, like these fellows are young men, and you know what they contribute to community now it's becoming more and more valuable, and you know that's I like to see. It's less work for me, but it's really shows that they've taken on board those principles and how they contribute to their mob. Old people, my grandmother and like a lot of that generation, they would sing songs over the young kids, like when we were babies, rub guinea fat or emu fat on us and that, and they'd sing a song, and that song basically means grow up strong and be useful to your people. And so that's something that always stuck with me all my life, you know. And I think that gives you direction when you might be floundering around a bit and wondering what direction. That always comes back to me, you know. Be strong, stand strong. We say "Bana Jan" in our language, means stand strong and be useful to your people. And it gives you know, keep that idea that there's more than just yourself. And yeah, and we are, you know, like Brother Stu said, it's not always easy, and we don't always get it right as dads. And you know, this morning I already pulled one other son out of a bog this morning, and now he's in a boat way out to sea, and the wind's blowing the wrong way, so we might have to go rescue him. But you know, we all got muggles in our family too, but it doesn't matter how much times where he ends up. I'm still his dad, and I still got a responsibility. These are still his brothers. We still got a responsibility to go pull him out when he gets bogged in the sand, and go and find him when he's lost at the sea. You know, and I think those principles are good things for life. Eh?
Wow.
Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And look, I mean, I just want to say thanks so much, Carl and Jazz and Budam and Stu and Reese, for making time today to share some of that knowledge. I feel like this platform is so inadequate in lots of ways. Do you know, I'd rather be sitting out on country with you, having this yarn and taking everyone with us. But, you know, it does give us a good insight and a good intro. And I just want to honour you as well, Kyle, and Stu as well. And in that, you know, Kyle and I met a number of years ago up there on the Gold Coast at a conference. And we had a feed, and before you knew it, we were out on country and sharing. And so I've always felt really respected by you, Kyle, and so I want to honour you for that as well. And Stewie, same thing. You know, I've been on the Central Coast here for almost 20 years now, and has been difficult to connect culturally with people that I think, you know, would take me on some of that journey, and they've always been really well respected by you. And so I want to honour you as well in this space as a senior man and a cultural leader in this space as well, Stu. So, and for your sons as well, you know, like always felt really respected by Reese and Juz and you know, Budam and Bijang and Lunging as well, you know, and your partners and your whole families for welcoming us in. And so thanks for that. It's been an absolute privilege to be welcomed into some of your black privilege, like you say, Kyle.
Yeah, no, we'll have to do it again soon, eh, Stu? Come down that way. Yeah.
You're always welcome, brother. It's it'll be great. Maybe we can get Phil to dig deep into his wallet for a change and buy some food or something. You know.
My country's out west. I've got nothing here. You have to look after me, Stu.
He plays on that pretty well. No, Kyle, honestly, I'd love to, and I, you know, same way, have to pull my finger out and get up and sit with you on your.
Brother. Yeah, always welcome, mate. Yeah, anytime.
Cheers, brother. And thanks, boys. You definitely or men, I should say, young men. You make our bellies smile, which is a really powerful thing for me. Look, I'm going see through. That's how happy I am. In spirit now.
We're headed to that session, aren't we? Might need Nunkary to bring you back. That's it for this session, eh?
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for your facilitation. It's really awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Rip. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yano.
Yeah, thanks.
See you, mate.
Yano.
See you, Rick.
All right.
There you go.
Thank you. Paleo.
Yo.